I call this special meeting of the North Adams City Council to order for June 16th, 2020, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the North Adams City Council will be conducted remotely with no in-person attendance of members of the public. This meeting can be viewed live on the Northern Berkshire Community Television Station and will be posted to their website as soon as possible. Madam Clerk, if you would call the roll.
Here.
Bona signifies here. Harpin.
Here.
Here. LaForest.
Here.
Lamb.
Here.
Moulton.
Aye.
Sweeney.
Here.
And Councillor Wilkinson is delayed by a moment, but I understand he is getting connected. If we may have a moment of silent remembrance and then the pledge. And the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all. Thank you. My hope was again to not have to ask for a suspension of rules 10 and 11, but I think we're almost there. For purposes of discussion, may I have a motion to suspend rules 10 and 11? And do we have a second? Did we have a second?
I'll second for conversation.
Councillor Lamb. The idea is that by next Tuesday night at our regular meeting, it looks like I would still want to do it by Zoom, but we would then have a method to allow the public to participate in a webinar format. And Councillor Lamb, if I can ask you to explain that in more detail.
Sure. So real quickly, basically Zoom meetings don't allow you to mitigate who's on the central screen. In the traditional format, the Zoom webinar platform allows you to have panelists, which would be the counselors and anyone that's speaking on the agenda. And then what can happen is you can have 100 people watching it and they can raise their hand in the actual function of Zoom to then be brought in. So the nice thing is that they can observe the whole thing live. They can speak during public comment periods. But it also allows you to manage the central portal. And I know Pittsfield is doing this basically for their council meetings at this point. But the Zoom meeting platform itself doesn't allow for that management piece. You have to have the webinar piece. And I know the mayor is having, their IT department is working on getting that license set up so that we can use that going forward. It will require that all of us provide whatever email address we log into Zoom with so that we can be included as panelists for the conversation.
And as I understand it, this actually works better for people who don't have cable television. Discussion? Councillor Harpin and then Councillor LaForest.
Okay, so I think that sounds like a good format, and so it would be provided live through Zoom, I imagine. Would it also be part of the, would it be on channel 1303 live as well?
Yeah, I believe so, because Northern Berkshire Community Television just takes the Zoom output and puts that on their channel 1303. Correct?
We would actually make them also a panelist, so they would have full administrative access to stream it onto the TV station.
As they are now, the box you see on your screen that says NBCTC, that's how they get their signal. Councillor LaForest.
Just very quickly, I'm going to vote no on this this evening. Unfortunately, I feel very strongly that this is something that should have been resolved already. We're 3 months into COVID, and I do hope that we'll be meeting in council chambers again soon, but I voted yes on this several times, hoping it would be resolved the following week, and we're continuing to see a delay in allowing the public to participate, and it's just not fair or frankly ethical. Thank you.
Councilor Moulton, did I see your hand up? No.
No,
Councilor
my
Black.
sentiment exactly.
Councilor Blackmer.
We're voting on the motion to suspend the rules. That's what the vote on the table is, correct?
For tonight's meeting, yes.
For tonight's meeting, okay. Just wanted to clarify because we went around, talked about the next meeting, which hasn't happened yet.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. We have 3 in favor. All those opposed?
No.
No.
3, 4, 5. The motion fails. Thank you. I'm not aware of anybody in the room who wants to speak, so I'm not sure where that leaves us.
I have a question. I guess this is a point. When we post the agenda online, is it posted with the Zoom link?
It has not been, no, but it will be.
Okay.
It will be for the
post
next
it now. I mean, it's too. I mean, because that's what other communities are doing. Now, I just spent 2 hours on a town meeting, at a select board meeting, where the public just clicked on the same Zoom link I did. So, there were other options.
Councilor Lamb.
So yeah, the link for many of the committee meetings has been included in the agendas. I know that I believe both of Councilor Harpen's finance committee meetings, it is included in those agendas on the city website, but it has not been included for our council meetings just at all in these past meetings, as far as I'm aware.
Let the record show that Councilor Wilkinson is joining the room. Councilor Bona, I have a second notification.
Yeah, I'm trying to switch devices. So the volume on the other one is so low. So
Okay, I'll do that then. Thanks. Well, failing a course of action on this then for now. We do have 2 items on our agenda this evening. The mayor's communication presenting the budget and a communication requesting an appointment, which would require us to suspend rules on that. Without objection, I'd like to take up the appointment first to get that off the plate. Everybody okay with that? Hearing no objections. Paper 11,885, Mayor's Communication number 32, requesting the appointment of Michael Obasahan to the North Adams Board of License.
Point of order.
Yes,
We have to vote
Councilor.
on the suspension of rules first. It's a different
correct.
suspension of rules.
You're correct. I'll need a motion to suspend the rules for the purposes of considering this appointment.
I believe Councilor
Motion
Wilkinson is
suspended.
sharing his screen right now.
Which counselor is sharing the screen?
Councilor Wilkinson?
Okay.
Because he doesn't know what he's doing. Have a good time.
Do I have a motion to suspend the rules for the purposes of considering the request for an
Motion
appointment?
to suspend.
Do I have a second? Counselor Moulton made the motion, Counselor Lamb seconded. Any discussion? Counselor LaForest.
Is there an urgent need to put this agenda on tonight's, to put this agenda item on tonight's meeting?
I will let the mayor answer that for the purposes of getting through this vote.
I think it's an important step to take. The licensing commission at this moment is down a member, and there are a number of things that the license commission is taking up because they are tasked with additional responsibility because of changes that the legislature and the ABCC have made as part of the reopening plan. So they have had the need and the responsibility to approved some outdoor dining plans, and I would expect more of those to be coming forward. So I think it's an important commission at this particular moment to have at full strength.
Further discussion? Councilor Blackmer.
Well, I totally understand that, and I have no problem with it. I actually like the candidate who's been proposed. I do feel that we do have a quorum of the committee, and yes, they have important work to do, but I don't see the need for a suspension of rules to vote on something that we could vote next week. It's not like we have one licensing. It's not like we lost 2 licensing board members. We do have a quorum of the licensing commission to function.
Further discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules to consider this appointment. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye and or raising your hands. We have 3 in favor. All those opposed?
No.
No.
5 opposed, motion fails. Thank you. Next on our agenda, paper 11,882, Mayor's Communication number 31. I'm sorry, we need names of those voting in favor and against. Those in favor were Hopkins, Lamb, and Bona. Am I correct?
Yes.
Those opposed, Councilors Moulton, Sweeney, Councilor Harpen, Councilor LaForest, Councilor Blackmer were opposed. Thank you. That's just for the record. Paper 11,885, Mayor's Communication number 32, requesting number 30. Okay, I'm backing up. Yeah. Paper 11,882, Mayor's Communication number 31, presenting the city's municipal budget for fiscal year 2021. We can have a motion on the table for discussion purposes. I assume a motion to refer to Finance Committee would be in order.
That's what I was gonna say. So moved.
The Councilor
Second.
Blackmer and Councilor LaForest seconding, referring this to the Finance Committee. Mayor Bernard, I'm going to give you the floor first, and then we'll take up questions.
Right, thank you. I'm going to attempt to share my screen and run through a brief summation of the budget for the council and for those viewing this meeting. Perfect. I'm going to begin with 2 fairly text-dense pieces of information from the State House News Service. I tried to highlight several salient passages. They basically reflect what we have discussed around the budget process up to this point, that the second quarter of 2020 is on track to be the worst for the state economy in the recorded history of Massachusetts, that our recovery will depend on an effective public health response, and that the more that we can protect our communities from the spread, the faster we will recover. And then there was another piece in State House News which talked about the budget process. And again, I think there are 3 pieces that describe the situation we find ourselves in at this moment. The first being that with just over 2 weeks remaining in the fiscal year, there are still more questions than answers on the status of the next fiscal year's state operating budget, and that would be true of our municipal budget as well. A lot of uncertainty around the economy and the state of revenues is making it difficult to develop a reliable budget plan. As we walk through these slides and the information that I provided to the council, you will find that that is borne out. And then finally, I think the most simple summation, the most salient summation is that reliable information is not currently at hand. And so the last budget presentation, the last slides we showed, I showed a history of net state revenue. I want to show that again with what we believe we understand about the picture for fiscal year 2021. So where does that leave us? And what is the context in which we are looking at our budget? We are in new territory. The economic impact of the pandemic will affect state and local receipts. We know that we're seeing state revenue shortfalls. Again, more questions than answers, and we still don't know what, if anything, we may see in the way of federal relief. So the budget that you're going to be considering, discussing tonight, and then through the Finance Committee process, is in many ways a placeholder, understanding that it will need numerous reviews and amendments between now and the time that we set the tax rate. So what we're looking at is a budget of $41,236,000, which is an increase of $194,698 from the current year's budget. That's 0.21%. The budget that I'm introducing does include a level fund for the North Adams Public Schools. The school committee has had 2 meetings recently where we have discussed and considered a number of budget scenarios, but again, those are still considerations. The school committee has not acted on a budget, so we are holding that number right now, anticipating that that will need to be changed as part of the overall budget process. And then as we continue to try and keep the budget in balance, we will continue to maintain our spending and hiring freezes that have been in place since early this spring. Just to show you a couple of places where our fixed costs are driving increases in the overall budget. $118,000, $119 almost in health insurance, $128,000 in our retirement line, an increase of $100,000 in municipal interest, and a $58,000 increase in debt, for just over $400,000 in those fixed accounts within the unclassified portion of the city budget. So here's what it looks like as, we did identify some places where there are reductions in the budget, the elimination of seasonal workers in public services, an adjustment of veteran services. Again, this does not reduce benefits, but we're basing the number on the actuals that we've seen and the trend history in veteran services. We have proposals to reallocate some expenses to our municipal technology fund. We anticipate that our auditor will be departing early in the fiscal year, and as we reallocate staff in that area, we would see approximately a half an FTE of savings there. And then the traffic and parking line, reallocating those expenses out of the expense budget and requesting an appropriation from the parking meter reserve account to save approximately $237,000. So from a category perspective, here's what it looks like as you look at all of the major categories. You see that the public schools are the largest single budget area in the budget, and it's also important to note that a portion of our health insurance cost that is on the city side of the budget also represents charges against the public schools, as does the lion's share of our debt payment, our debt service, being Coal Grove Park Elementary School. To show you the trends on the main budget categories, a $90,000 proposed reduction in the general government category. It's about 6%, almost 7% cut there. A slight decrease in public safety, 0.4%, almost $20,000. 167,000 in public services for 5%, but then those are offset in some increased areas. We are again proposing a level appropriation for the schools at this point in the budget process. We're seeing that 4% increase in pension that I mentioned earlier, that almost 2%, 1.8% in unclassified. And again, I wanted to show what the unclassified budget section consists of. That main area, the large blue area, is the health insurance. The next largest areas are the Hoosick Water Quality District and the Northern Berkshire Vocational District. General insurance, and then other categories in the budget being that smallest portion at 140,122. Again, a slight increase in capital spending. Again, this is not true capital in terms of long-term capital. These are capital budget items. The interest and debt payments, you can see the trend history there as well. The increases from the prior fiscal year in both of those categories. One of the reasons for that being there were a couple of items that were interest only in the first year of those notes, including the investments in the public services truck fleet that the council made in 2018, where we are now starting to make principal payments in the 21 budget. It's always helpful to remind people how we raise revenue in the city, and we raise that through our tax levy. We are limited to 2.5% above the prior year's limit, plus new growth, which is to say any new development or changes to properties that have a higher assessed value. And then the absolute limit that we face is our levy ceiling, which is defined as 2.5% of the full and fair cash value of taxable real and personal property in the city. Here is just a quick look at the trend history of our tax levy, where our levy ceiling has been our levy limit, what we've taxed to and what we've had in terms of excess capacity, including our projections for the coming fiscal year. As far as anticipated revenues, again, this is one of those moving targets. We are assuming that our school aid and unrestricted aid remain level. We can anticipate that probably will not be the case, and that these will be two major areas where we will need to review. This is a reasonable estimate for property taxes. And then we do feel the area that we feel most confident in, because it's the area that we were most pessimistic about, is our local receipts. As far as the assumptions for revenue, we believe that state aid estimates will change, and that will require additional modifications in the budget. The one area that we've seen progress and growth in over the past several years has been our room and meals tax receipts, and we think those really will remain sluggish into the fourth quarter of fiscal year 21 before we really see receipt. And then we're basing the assumption that our local receipt collection rates will remain within budgeted estimates. We talked about this the last time. Every point off the collection rate is about $200,000 off of the revenue stream, and therefore that has to be made up. As far as options and alternatives, the next phase of this, if we start to see some of these changes in estimates and they are negative, is that we would begin implementing staff reduction plans. We would look at places to reduce services, and that school district budget that we are trying to hold against the most drastic scenarios that have been presented, we would have to start implementing those cuts. So the timeline on this is we will continue as we have to track the state budget process and the COVID response efforts in collaboration with the council as we take up this budget. We will keep monitoring the progress of federal stimulus legislation, which may or may not provide relief for cities and towns. We're going to keep monitoring the current year's budget to prepare for the year-end closeout. Everything's trending in a good direction right now, but we don't want to take anything for granted going into these last months of the year. And then once we pass a budget, my expectation is that between now and the time that we set the tax rate, we will need to be meeting regularly to review and to amend the budget as we go forward and as better information becomes available. So that's the context in which I introduced the budget to you. I'm happy to take questions on the slides or on the budget document itself.
All right, councilors, who has a question? Councilor LaForest, I saw your hand first.
Sorry, so a couple of seemingly dumb questions, which I'm sure will generate others. How does the school department anticipate using a level funded budget, given the presumed new models of education that will be required to be initiated this fall? And is it reasonable to believe that level funding will permit that to happen?
As with so much of this budget, Counselor, I don't know. There is advocacy that steps that would be required and investments to allow school to open would be funded separately. So there would be a hold harmless provision. That's pure advocacy right now. I can't say that will happen. We also don't have the ability to answer that question. Councilor, did you want to interject?
No, I'm sorry. I was motioning to Councilor Hopkins. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, sorry. We still have not seen, although we expect it to come fairly soon, the guidance from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education on what those models and expectations look like. So it's a little bit difficult to answer how we would, operationalize a budget around that. What I will say is the school committee has looked at budget scenarios ranging anywhere from a 10 to a 15% cut with 11.5 and 12.5 steps in between, trying to understand if our Chapter 70 allocation were cut, how would we, what steps would the district take to respond to that? But again, that's still a matter for discussion. So for the purposes of the appropriation in the municipal budget, I felt it was important to stay with the level, because I know that there's been advocacy at the state level. I know that there's been advocacy in the legislature to try to enact that, to try and hold to the 2020 number. We can and may need to make cuts to that number, but I would rather not offer those too precipitously if there's a hope that we would not need to go that deep.
Did you have a follow-up question?
I do. So my follow-up question, I guess, is going to incorporate several other questions that I have. But so we know that, or we expect that revenue will be cut across the board from all sides, from the state, from local receipts, from property tax. Local residents are having a hard time with the economy. Not everyone is an essential worker. Lower income families are shown to be at greater impact from unemployment. So all that considered, why are we continuing with a budget that doesn't reflect at least a minimal amount of cuts? I just feel that given the trend, we're making more work for ourselves down the road and giving a much more optimistic picture, unless the plan is to dramatically raise taxes. And that's not an accusation, but just there's only so many ways to roll out the logic in the fall when we determine the tax rate. So are there solid plans in place now for the cuts that you tell us are almost certain to happen?
There are models, but first of all, what I want to say is that if I was coming across as optimistic, I missed the boat on my delivery, because I feel no optimism around this scenario.
No, I'm not suggesting that by any means. I'm looking for a more realistic budget so that we don't have to come back and cut over and over and over again as the numbers are rolled out from Boston.
Yeah, and I would say that the reason to begin where we're beginning is because we don't know what the depth of those cuts is going to be, and the council has the ability to cut the budget. We don't have the ability to add back if our most dire projections become less dire. If there were to be relief from the, from the federal government through the, through a stimulus that went directly to states and municipalities, that would be an offset. I don't have a high degree of confidence in that, but I also don't have a certainty that it won't happen to the point where I really want to cut ourselves past the point where we could recover. So we do have a force reduction plan in place that we would look at, and that we would look to the to the council to collaborate on. So we, as far as prioritizing positions, and we would look at temporary positions first, and then part-time positions, then full-time, with consideration given to are there particular skills or qualifications that someone has that would mitigate a pure just run down a list. And then the last step would be if we needed to do some impact bargaining around redeployment of bargaining units for to fill some of those temporary gaps. So that would be an area. We would have to look at services, and in fact, that's one of the things that we've done this summer to address our efforts to bring in our budget as close to balance as we can. I elected not to hire seasonal workers this summer, and that we've carried that into next year. Again, that's a position that represents a savings. We would take positions where we have vacancies, and we would make those permanent. We would not move to fill positions, and then we would get to the really tough cuts. Again, I think the reason I focused on the unclassified expenses is I think it's really important that we all recognize that 20+% of our budget is commitments that we have to entitlements to our employees, to health insurance, to retirement, and those are things that we're locked in on. So even then, when we start to look at places where we can make cuts, they're a lot harder to make.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb, then Councillor Moulton, then Councillor Harpen.
Great, thank you. Through the chair to the mayor, there's 3 questions I have. They're not really related to one another, but I'll just try to get them all out. The first one was actually kind of going off of Councillor Forrest. I know there's going to be a lot of line-by-line work when it gets to the Finance Committee, which is great when we can dig in that deep. But I'm curious if when I watched the school board committee meeting where you went through the different scenarios, I felt that presentation was very realistic at different levels, and I'm wondering if that might be of value to present that in some format when the committee meetings happen as part of the school budget conversation. I just think that would be helpful for that dialogue when we're looking at the larger budget. That's just a statement. The first question that I actually have is around, it's a small item, in the grand scheme of things in the budget, but with the ballots, just based on the current layout going into this year for the election, I was kind of curious if we're anticipating any major budgetary impacts. It's pretty much a stationary item on our current budget, year to year for the most part, and I'm not sure if that's going to be the case when we look at, what vote by mail or other operations look like. So that's, I guess, just a question of something to put out there for further discussion with the Finance Committee meetings. And then the last one is, again, knowing that we're going to dig into this, or that Councillor Harpen's going to dig into these with the individual committee meetings. I was just curious with the public safety budget, are all of the position salaries in there currently occupied positions, or is that kind of at an ideal scenario of full staffing? I'm just curious if it's an aspirational full staffing budget, or if it's an actual current human bodies in positions kind of budget.
So I'm gonna look to Mike to nod if I say nod or shake his head when I say something dumb. But I believe that represents actual positions, not vacancies.
Thank you.
Mike
Counselor,
enjoys nodding his head when I say dumb things.
Counselor Lamb, you're all set? Counselor Moulton, then Counselor Harpen.
Yes, kind of what Councilor Lamb referred to with the school came up with the 10, 12 and a half and 15% scenario. Has the administration, anything like that within the city budget, just to set things up, good to worst case scenario, presentation?
Yeah, we can bring that forward with the discussions at finance. So we have it, we have places, but then we're also, as part of this process, because I didn't bring this forward as a budget with an order, because I think this year, as much as any, it's going to be important that these conversations be highly collaborative with the finance committee. So we will be prepared to walk through some of those scenarios.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Harpen.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I just want to start out by saying the Finance Committee is going to be having meetings next week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. They all start at 6 o'clock. So we will definitely do what we can to get these televised and provide the format of the webinar that the mayor and Councilor Lamb were talking about earlier, so that it will also be live streamed as well, and the public can participate. So it's something that we've always done in the past. We've had the public be able to come into the finance committees, and I'm certainly going to drive to do that again for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So there's that. As far as questions through the chair to the mayor, I just have two questions. One is, what is the forecasted shortfall for fiscal year 2020? And what are our current reserves? And is that something that you think that you might be using the reserves in order to balance a budget?
Sure. I don't have the exact revenue number. Again, we're tracking. It's tracking positive. The last month of the year is going to be the one that really answers the question for us where we stand. I'm going to, if you don't mind, with your indulgence, I'm going to share the screen again, because the budget document has a summary of some of the major reserve accounts. So I just want to jump straight to those. And I think I'm going to have to rotate the screen. Yes, I'm going to have to rotate the screen. So that's the position of our main reserve accounts as of right now. So I had mentioned the suggestion about taking some things into the 21 budget out of tech and parking meters specifically. But the main fund is our stabilization fund, and you can see where the balance on that is. We as much as possible are trying to present the budget that we're presenting to the council for next year without use of reserves. I know last year we had to bring in some reserves to close out the budget. We may need to do that this year, but that's why we're really trying to manage as tightly as we can to avoid that or to limit that as much as possible.
Any further questions, Councilor Harpen?
I was just wondering if did you answer the question about the shortfall? Do we have a forecasted shortfall for fiscal year 2020?
Again, we don't have a forecasted shortfall right now, because we don't know what the receipts for June are going to look like. So we don't have a reliable number. Again, things have been trending positive, but we're not sure what the last month's going to bring. To give you an accurate number,
Thanks. Counselor Blackmer and then LaForest.
Mayor, are we, through the chair to the mayor, I didn't see the expense report yet from the auditor, but maybe it just got lost in all the email, but are we gonna be able to have that before, by next week?
for May.
Yes, May, obviously, we can't do June, it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll do our best to get that turned around.
Because I think that would be really helpful in kind of looking at the conversation and where the year ends where we're gonna end the year.
Yeah.
I agree. Thanks, Counselor.
And then my other follow-up question is, are we looking at a 1/12 budget for July?
I would prefer not to. I don't see the need, given that we have the ability to work through this on a fairly regular basis. I would say, you know, a town's in a little bit of a different position than the city because we're able to meet. You know, we are not able to meet. The council meets bi-weekly, and I'm willing to work with you on additional meetings as needed so that we can really be reviewing the budget in, you know, fairly real time.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor LaForest.
Just a quick follow-up question, well, two actually, to the charts that you were showing just a minute ago. How much is actually in the stabilization account?
602, 3.
606.
606.
607, yeah.
Okay, and does the school department have access to, there is a large chunk of money, I believe, in the school choice, or there was, the school choice account. Is that available for mitigating any Chapter 70 cuts that will be imposed on the school system?
Yes, and the budget proposals that the school committee has looked at include two drawdowns out of that account.
Okay.
The committee had previously approved a $265,000 allocation from the school choice revolving account. And as part of the various budget scenarios that the school committee has looked at, has proposed an additional 200 out of that account. So the 11.5% budget scenario is a little bit over a $2 million cut to the budget. That's mitigated by almost 1.2 million in additional funds. So that would be school choice. That would be some federal stimulus. That would be a special education account. And there's one more line that, off the top of my head, I'm not going to remember. But there is already additional resources being brought forward from school choice and other accounts to mitigate cuts to the school department should Chapter 70 be drastically reduced.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Do I see other hands? Further discussion? Counselor Harpen, you reminded us that you have 3 meetings scheduled next week.
Yes, that's correct. I do. And so I haven't posted the meeting for Wednesday yet, but that'll be shortcoming. Monday will be the general government, the schools, and McCann School. Tuesday will be unclassified capital, pension, interest, and debt, and that is right before our city council meeting. And Wednesday will be public safety and public service.
Terrific. That sounds like a busy agenda. Thank you. So further discussion on the paper before us. Seeing none, we have a motion and a second to refer to the Finance Committee. I hesitate to ask if there's a return date on it, or do we know of one that has to be met? Councilor Harpen.
Mayor, do you want to talk about that one? I think we were planning, I think is it Monday and Tuesdays, the 29th and 30th?
Yeah, I would imagine that once we get through the 3 Finance Committee meetings, I will be requesting another special meeting in order to do the final presentation of the budget, including the order, so that we meet the June 30 deadline.
All right. So with the return date of the special meeting at the end of June, then, sounds like. Yes, Counselor Harpen.
I just have one more request. If the mayor, could you send the counselors the slides from the school committee presentation? So that we just have an understanding of where they're at in their budget. It would probably be helpful.
Yep, I'll ask the superintendent to forward those.
Okay, thank you.
Fabulous. Motion and a second to refer to Finance Committee without seeing any further discussion. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. It passes. Thank you. No other agenda items. Mayor's concerns? Mayor?
I'm concerned about the budget.
All right, then. I like a man who is succinct. If nothing further, then counselors' concerns? My screen just went a little crazy. I don't see any counselors' concerns. Motion's in order then to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second from Counselors Blackmore and LaForest. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all. Have a good night.